A man in a ball cap slides a battered hard case across a folding banquet table, flips the latches, and turns it toward you. Take a look. This was the American Gun Show, a weekend arms bazaar in a rented armory or out at the county fairgrounds. And for one whole generation of men, it sat closer to church than to commerce. The rifles on those tables were cheap. A bolt action that had been carried through a world war went for under $20, a day or two of a working man's pay. And here's what got lost in the long fight over these rooms. The show was never really about the guns. It was the last place a certain kind of man walked in to be among his own. Almost nobody outside those doors understood that, and for 40 years they never had to, until the words gun show stopped meaning a Saturday and came to mean something the whole country was sure it already understood. It cost more than the $10 on the door. To see why, start with what was actually on the tables. After the Second World War and then Korea, military surplus poured into the United States by the shipload. Bolt guns that had been through the worst decade in human history, crated up and sold off by governments that suddenly had millions to spare. Men like Sam Cummings built fortunes moving it. For a time, his was the largest private small arms dealer in the world, and much of what filled those tables came through a warehouse like his. Picture an Army-Navy store around 1958, a wooden barrel by the register packed muzzle up with Mausers and Enfields. A man reaching in to turn each one to the light like he's picking out a melon. A Finnish Mosin ran about $16.95. A sporterized British Enfield, under $20. A Springfield that had been to France, $36 and change. You could carry home a piece of a world war for less than a good pair of boots. And you didn't even have to leave the house. For most of those years, you could clip a coupon from the back of a gun magazine, mail it off with a money order, and a war rifle would come to your door. It's the kind of thing men still tell you about their fathers. The envelope, the wait by the mailbox, a rifle somehow still in the family. It was that easy, until it wasn't. What ended it came out of the back of one of those same magazines. The rifle a drifter used to kill a president in 1963 had been mail-ordered from a Chicago house called Klein's for $12 and change, a little under $20 with the cheap scope. When the country went looking for how a man like that got a rifle, the answer was a coupon. 5 years later, in October of 1968, the Gun Control Act was signed. Mail-order guns to the door were finished, the cheap imports were choked off at the border, and the dealers who'd sold them were chained to the single address on their license. If you wanted to stand in a room full of guns and put your hands on them, there was suddenly one place left. One place, and it grew into something nobody planned. In 1955, a handful of collectors in Tulsa set up 19 tables in an old armory as a club project. It lost money for years. That same show today fills roughly 11 acres under one roof, more than 4,000 tables, something close to 6 miles of aisle, around 35,000 people through the doors in a single weekend. Admission runs about $10. It is the largest gun show open to the public in the country. So why would a grown man burn a Saturday, a rare day off, deer season or not, to walk a fairgrounds full of card tables? Because that room was the one place he was fluent. These were men who'd tell you they loved their fathers by handing you a rifle instead of saying it out loud. They came for the cosmoline and the bad coffee and the arguing over whether a stamp on a receiver meant what the next fellow claimed, and to finally put their hands on the guns they'd only read about by lamplight. A father brought a son the way another man brings a boy to the ballpark. Nobody checked your politics at the door. Nobody had to. And for 40 years, almost no one outside that hall gave those Saturdays a thought. Then came one Tuesday in April. If you've ever walked those aisles, you already know the pull of it. The low roar of 1,000 quiet conversations, the smell of oil and old wood. Stay with me. The day this whole world changed is still ahead of us, and it came at these rooms from the outside, for a reason nobody there ever wanted. By the time most of the country finally heard those two words, gun show, they came bolted to a third: loophole. And here's where most people on all sides get it wrong. The word paints a picture of an open-air weapons bazaar, a place where anyone could arm anyone, no questions asked. But the government's own numbers never told that story. When the Bureau of Justice Statistics asked prison inmates where they got the gun in their crime, fewer than 1 in 100, about 0.8%, pointed to a gun show. That doesn't mean the tables were spotless. Federal agents ran stings and did turn up prohibited buyers, slipping through on private sales, and pretending that never happened is its own kind of dishonesty. But walk a serious collector's show, and you'd mostly see the opposite of chaos. Old men with a yellow zip tie run through the action of every rifle, so anyone can see at a glance it's empty. Men who'd handled guns for 60 years, doing everything right, out of a care the headlines never had a name for. So how does a place like that, almost a footnote in the country's gun crime, become a synonym for everything gone wrong and nearly overnight? That reputation was born on one date at one show. In December of 1998, two 17-year-old boys walked the Tanner Gun Show outside Denver. By the accounts that came later, they went table to table asking sellers a single question: private or licensed? They were hunting the seller who wouldn't ask a name, wouldn't run a check, wouldn't leave a trail. They were too young to buy, so they'd brought an 18-year-old friend, Robin Anderson, to pass the cash across the table. She bought 3 of the 4 guns the 2 of them carried into Columbine High School 4 months later. Nobody asked her name, nobody made a call. When she testified to the Colorado legislature afterward, she put it in 3 words: it was too easy. She said she'd never have done it if anyone had made her sign a thing. In 2000, Colorado voters answered. A ballot measure requiring background checks on gun show sales passed about 70% to 30%. And that was the real change. Not a table, not a price, a meaning. Before that spring, a huge slice of the country had never heard of a gun show, or half imagined something like a car show, where men bring their collections to be admired. After it, 2 words that had meant a man's day off meant a photograph of a school. You would expect that to be the end of these places. It was the opposite. For years, every fight over guns was the best thing that ever happened to the gun show. When Washington passed the Brady Law in 1994, a background check and a short waiting period, not the separate ban on certain rifles and magazines from the same year that still gets confused with it. The shows didn't shrink. They swelled. Every threat of a new restriction sent men out to the fairgrounds to buy while they still could. And there was a quieter change that had already rewired the room. Back in 1986, a law finally let licensed dealers sell at shows. Before that, they were stuck at their storefronts. Overnight, a collector's swap meet turned into a marketplace. Walk into a big show in those peak years, and the lot is overflowing into the grass. And inside it's shoulder to shoulder, cases of ammunition moving by the pallet. But watch the tables and you can see the soul of the place shift. The wall of blued steel and walnut, the Smiths, the Colts, the old military bolt guns, starts giving way to black polymer, the same handful of plastic pistols you could grab at any big box store. The men who came for history were still there. The men doing the buying more and more were there for something else. Walk into that same hall today, though, and you feel it before you see it. What finally hollowed these places out wasn't a law at all. It was a search bar. In 1999, the same year as Columbine, though the two had nothing to do with each other, a site called Gun Broker went live, and men took to calling it the eBay of guns. Think about what the show had always sold underneath the guns. Two things: discovery, the jolt of turning a corner under bad light and finding the exact rifle you had chased for a decade on a stranger's table. And knowledge, where you learned what a thing was worth by watching what it actually sold for. A search engine swallowed both. Picture the man who used to plan his whole month around a show, now thumbing a rifle's name into a phone and getting 20 of them before his coffee cools, each with a price already hung on it. Fewer buyers walk the aisles, so the sellers still paying for tables and gas and a motel room raised prices to cover it, and higher prices thinned the crowd again. The dealer who once laid out 30 beautiful revolvers with folks 3 deep to look now breaks down early beside a booth selling beef jerky and one selling t-shirts. So what's left when the deals and the guns have both moved to the phone in your pocket? Here's what's left. The one thing a website has never once managed to copy is the man on the other side of the table, and those men are getting old. Go to a show now and you'll hear it from the graybeards setting up. The collectors like us are dying off, and the young ones want the plastic, not a pre-war Smith. There's a kind of table you'll see at almost every show these days, and it's the whole story in a glance. Somewhere every weekend, a grandson is standing behind his grandfather's collection, 30 or 40 guns that never once touched the internet, trying to move them. He's got the prices half wrong in both directions. A common shotgun marked like a treasure because the family heard guns are worth money now. A genuine rarity marked cheap because the boy has no idea what he's holding, because the thing actually vanishing off those tables isn't the steal, it's the knowledge. 60 years of knowing which stamp matters, which importer, which year. The very thing the grandfather could have told you in a single sentence walking out the door beside you and never coming back. And that, more than any deal, is the reason to still walk the aisles. So walk in. The hall is thinner than it was and grayer, and the aisles don't run 6 miles anymore. But somewhere down one of them there's still a folding banquet table under a humming fluorescent light, and a man in a ball cap who slides a battered hard case across the felt, flips the latches, and turns it toward you. Take a look. That part never changed. It's still history. You can hold in your 2 hands, handed across by someone who can tell you exactly where it's been, the one thing the phone in your pocket will never do. So let me ask you the only question that matters here. The gun in your safe right now, the one somebody slid across a table or a kitchen or the tailgate of a truck, who handed it to you? Tell me about it down below. And if you're one of the men who still won't sell the one his father gave him, subscribe and stick around.